All right. I'd like to just start by saying welcome and thanks for coming in. This afternoon, we're going to be doing the webinar for getting started with Microsoft Teams. My name's Seth Bonder. I'll be the presenter. And I just want to mention a couple little quick points before we jump into the material here. First off, we will be going from 2 p.m. to 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And there are a couple things I will talk about at the beginning and at the end of the seminar here or webinar here. First off, I did want to mention that in addition to the webinar itself, we are going to be offering classes which will include the Teams information. In fact, the class is Office 365 with Teams. And as you can see here, we do have the link for the class. If you just go to skillforge.com/courses, you'll be able to get to the general area where the material can be seen, where the other classes we offer can be had as well. And the specifics for the 365 with Teams class, as you can see here, will be April 15th, May 13th, and June 10th. So if anybody gets interested after we finish the webinar here, please feel free to take a look at the website, skillforge.com/courses. And if you want to type the one Microsoft Teams with Office 365 training, but one way or the other, if you go to the /courses, you'll be able to get to the general area where the courses, including this one, will be offered. As far as the stuff we're going to be covering, we're going to start off with just a little bit of an intro here. There's a phrase that's been tossed around a little bit in regard to this program, social media for business. It's not an exact description, but it does bring up a couple points which are worth talking about. Then we're going to basically go through a little run through on the material, basics of the program, teams and channels, working with chats, calls and team meetings, and a couple of the other under the hood type things, the command box, the settings, how some other apps can be added on to Microsoft Teams, and also a question that has been coming up again, a little bit, the connection to Outlook. And I do want to touch on that a little bit. Somebody's asking about the website and the dates. Let me go ahead and toss that back up for a moment. I'll just leave that there for a moment if anybody wants to jot that down. And I will bring it up again at the end of the webinar. But I did want to just say, since this program is starting to get pretty popular, especially under current circumstances, it's certainly worth at least being aware. That's one of the reasons we're doing the webinar for openers. Okay. Oh, and a couple people are asking about the link. Yeah, let me see if I can go ahead and put that in there for you. 1 second, please. I'll go ahead and drop that in. Okay. I think that should do it. And again, I'll put that up again at the end of the webinar so you can go ahead and take a look at that later if need be. Okay. During the class, some of you may have noticed that the microphones have been muted, not because I don't want to hear from anybody or talk to anybody, but there is a Q&A window which I will check into periodically. If there are any questions outside the immediate bounds of the material, you can put them in the Q&A. I'll try and go over that later. And I will also talk about a couple of other things relating to our webinar here at the end. So let me go ahead and tuck the slides away here for the moment, if I may. And I'll go ahead and bring up Teams. And I want to go ahead and do, as I said, a little bit of an intro and talk about one or two little quick things here. One of the terms that's been thrown around a little bit in regard to what this program is for, the term that I've heard is social media for business. I won't claim that it's an accurate term, but it does describe sort of kind of what's going on with this program in the sense that it is allowing people to do more than just have straight chats back and forth. That's what a program like Yammer is for. And the technical, or somewhat technical description of Teams, it's a core application for Office 365 that brings together conversations, calls, meetings, files. So it's supposed to be a workspace for doing more than just chatting. And especially since Skype for business is being deprecated, the thinking is that we need something to replace it. And Teams is what came in. Now, when we first look at the program, it actually bears a little bit of a resemblance to Microsoft Outlook, sort of, kind of. People have noted that it looks like a second cousin, as it were, because we have the channel changer over here on the left where we can go to the major areas, the stuff we're going to do. Up at the top, we have what they call the command box. And over toward the upper right, we also have the profile and the ability to get to our settings, which we'll talk about a little later. A couple of the items have actually been up. Sorry, sir. No, a couple of the items have actually been updated since the program was first introduced. A couple of the icons over here have changed. A couple of things have been added. But basically, we have about 4 or 5 main areas of interest. The Teams is kind of the big kahuna. We'll talk about that first in just a moment. The calendar, if anybody's interested, yes, the calendar does actually connect to the Outlook calendar. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Making calls, either audio or video. First have to throw in some contacts, as you can see. We can share files, and those can also be shared through the channels within Teams. As I said, the main thing about Microsoft Teams as opposed to Yammer, Yammer is intended primarily for just the equivalent of instant messaging, although it can do a couple of other things. Teams is intended to be a workspace, sort of an all-in-one for doing things remotely that otherwise we would do more or less face-to-face in the same office. And again, under the current circumstances especially, that's turning out to be pretty helpful. To start with, I want to talk a little bit about creating teams and channels. And it turns out it's not hard. This is one of the things I've noticed about Teams, is that the program is set up to make the important things pretty easy. When we go to the Teams item here, we click on it, we would normally be able to create a team directly here if there weren't any others. If by some chance we already had teams and wanted to create a new one, what we could do would be to go down to the little gear symbol here for managing teams, give a click. Program tells us that we don't have any at the moment. We can go ahead and click Create a Team, as you can see. And we can choose between building the team from scratch or creating from existing Office 365 groups or teams. Teams is a part of the 365 Office, so it integrates with all of them. If there's anything that you've already done, let's say in Outlook or in any of the other programs where team type setups can be done, you can use that information from there. If I click on Build a Team from Scratch, the program then asks me, do you want it to be private or public? And this is one of the first main decisions you'd have to make. Public, as it says, anyone in your organization can join. Private, people need permission to join. More often than not, from what I'm hearing so far, private seems to be the predominant choice, because usually a team owner, team manager, is going to want to keep the team focused, not have just anybody dropping by. They don't want party crashers. So we click on private for this example, and then giving the team a name, and type in whatever we want. The names should be short and succinct, understandable, and obviously they should relate to whatever the team is about. It can be changed later if need be. Once we give the team a name and a description, we can click Create. And after that's set up, we would then go ahead and add members. Somebody wanted to jump in with a question. Organization, somebody asks, what is the definition? That would be one's entire company. one's entire business. Basically, anyone within the organization can be added to a team. And if one wants to add people from outside the organization, that can be done. That's actually kind of outside the purview of the webinar here, but I'll mention that that is an Active Directory sort of thing that has to be dealt with. So if one wishes to add people from outside one's organization, for example, you work at a museum and you need to work remote but live with people from other museums, other organizations, other businesses, one would need to talk to the IT department, to whoever is managing the Active Directory server, to enable that particular feature. And once that's done, it is indeed quite easy to simply add people by email address, if nothing else. To add somebody within the organization, I would click in the space here. I could type part of my other name, my other identification within the company. Once I type the first few letters, it'll usually autocomplete. I can go ahead and click that. And then, as you can see, I would just click on Add. I can repeat that as often as I need to. I could click in the space up here once more, type in part of anybody else's name, whether it would be my boss or any of my coworkers, and add them in. And once I'd finished all that, I could go ahead and click Close at the bottom here. And then I would see that if I go to my team name here, click the drop down and click on Manage Team, I'll be able to see who my members are and whoever else happens to have been made an owner. Now, it is possible to actually elevate a member to be an owner. We can do this by just clicking the drop down here and saying owner. It's considered somewhat helpful to have at least one other owner besides the person who started the team. The thinking is the equivalent of an executive officer or whatever you want to call it. If you have a couple of owners, it means that you've got a backup. And if one person is out sick or if they're on vacation or whatever else, the problem of having somebody else who can get in there and do whatever for management of the team is solved. If one wishes to send a person back to being a mere member, that too is just fine. Members can be deleted. One can actually go ahead and click the delete button over here to do that if desirable. Oh, somebody does mention that companies can turn off the right to create teams. At this person's company, they only offer managers and above. Everyone else needs to go through IT. An important note, since some users might not see the create a team option. Thank you. Good point. Appreciate the info. Yeah, there's a lot of settings which are controlled, as it were, from behind the scenes, and I appreciate the additional bits of input there. If anybody wants to throw in any other useful tidbits, I'll be glad to bring them out and at least verbally mention them. Once we have at least a couple of members on the team, anything else we want to do, like creating channels, for example, would probably then come into play. We can actually go to the essential information up here, the tabs as they're called. We see the members here. We can also go to channels. And I only have the one channel here, the general channel. This is created automatically. If we then wanted to create any others, we could either click the Add Channel button here on the right, or depending if we prefer, we can go to the drop-down for the team overall. And as you can see, we can click on Add Channel, no problem there. We would then need to go ahead and put in a name, description, and choose a level of privacy. So I could just type whatever was appropriate. As usual, channels like team names should be specific to whatever the channel is about. The thinking about channels, somebody has said, is a little like the thinking of folders in the Windows or Mac environment. One is trying to sort of organize things. The privacy can either be standard or accessible only to a specific group of people. This is usually going to be up to the owners again. We can automatically show the channel in everyone's channel list, but we can still have the privacy thing there, the level of privacy set. And once we click add, of course, the channel will take a few seconds to come up, and then it should appear, and we're ready to go from there. Okay, somebody's asking, can we define what a channel is? That's a good question. Basically, a channel is to Teams kind of like what folders are to the Windows environment, if that makes a little sense. What we're trying to do here is give organization to the things that the team is doing. If you have a team that works on whichever projects, let's say 3, 4, 5 projects, you might have a channel for each of the individual projects. A person, a team member, can be involved in more than one channel, but the thinking is the channels are kind of like the folders of the team. We organize specific things within each channel that is particular to, let's say, whatever project that part of the team is working on. I hope that makes some sense. It's another way to keep information organized within the team. If you're working on project A and B, but not C or D, you would normally add things only in channel A or channel B. So they are means of organization. You can almost think of it literally like, channeling the flow of water, like the way the Roman aqueducts worked. You have some water going down this aqueduct, you'd have some water going down that one. So what we're trying to do is keep things organized, keep the flow of information where it needs to go. That's essentially it. Okay. Once we have a channel set up, the basic idea would then be to do whichever things. We can go down here to the bottom of the channel space and just click and start typing. Here we're using it almost like an instant message type of utility. As we can see down here, it would also be possible to attach files. I can click the button here and add whichever files. I could add pictures, I could add stickers, and I'll talk about this a little more later, but we can even add or have meetings for all the people involved in a given channel by clicking on the Meet Now button down here, which we can identify as the little video camera. So the goal of the teams and the channels is to try and make sure that people focus on whatever it is within a given project that they're trying to do. Somebody's asking, so privacy is what you use on a channel to select only certain members from the team. That is correct, yes. Now, if we want to have a chat with someone outside the teams, that's not a problem. And we can simply go to the chat over here and give it a click. And then if I wanted to speak with a particular person, so to speak, privately, I could go ahead and click on contacts. I might see one or several groups of contacts here, and we can see down at the bottom, it's very easy to create a new contact group. These can be completely arbitrary. You can organize your contacts however you want. They can be as simple as coworkers in the same department versus other departments. They can be friends within the company. You could have a contact group that would be just the managers. The key point is that once you've created the group, you would click the button for more options, click on Add Contact, and then again type part of the email address or whatever information to identify the person. If they autocomplete, you can click on them and then hit Add, and the person then immediately does come up. Okay, the question is, how do you delete a team if you accidentally created one that could be a channel for another team? Okay, creating and deleting teams is pretty straightforward. So the basic answer would go like this. I would go back to Teams, and I can actually go to the options for the team overall, we can see that it is possible to delete a team. It is also possible to delete channels. Here we go to manage channel and so on. But the basic answer is we would go up here and click on that and tell the program we want to delete the entire team. When we talk about chats, there are a couple of common features with teams, channels, etc., because the communications aspect of this is kind of the paramount thing. So if I were to click chat and then click on the name of the contact, I can see if I've been having any conversation with that contact, which I was playing around with a bit just to make sure everything was working. But if I click the more options here, I can say remove from the group, notify when available. I could also go down here and type in whatever else I wanted to type. Chats are normally text messaging, but if I wanted to converse with an individual by video or audio, all I have to do is make sure that the person is selected over here, and up at the top right, I can click on video call, or I can click on audio call. Either of these two will immediately kick into gear when I click the button, as long as everybody in question has the hardware, webcam, audio, whatever. Kicking up audio or video chats is very straightforward as well. Now, if one wants to talk about having a call from the get-go as opposed to a chat, we could click on calls, and again, we can see that getting to any of the contacts is simply a matter of clicking on contacts over here on the left and making sure that they're visible or available over here. And then again, we have the icons. We can go to chat, we can go to email, and here again we have video call, and here we have audio call. Any other options, adding to speed dial or even removing a contact, easy enough. Now, since I can't actually call myself, I can't really make a call down here, but I can tell you that once you click on make a call, the remaining process is just a couple clicks. And all you have to do at the other end, if you're receiving the call, is just click the button to join or answer, and it'll start right up. Okay, can you do a screen share through chat? As a matter of fact, you can. Let's see here. Okay, go back to chat. And let's see. As a matter of fact, right here, here's the button for screen sharing. So yes, that can be done pretty easily. About the only caution I would have mentioned in regard to screen sharing is, beware of bandwidth. Even today, not everybody has exceptionally wide bandwidth, and the screen share can be a little jumpy at times. Somebody's asking, can you record screen shares? I believe so. I've been looking into that, and I believe that can be done. I'm going to check on that one, but I'm 90% sure the answer to that is yes. Again, the question, I think, would mainly be where would the recording go, and would it be permitted? I think that's going to be another of those. You'll have to talk to the IT folks about level of privilege for things like that. But again, I am 90% sure the answer on that one is yes. Okay, going back to calls here for just a moment. As before, we can click on more actions. So here again, we can do a few different things with the calls. Now, calls can also be made from or within Teams. This is where we would have what amounts to a visual meeting. Oh, somebody mentions that they found that video chatting with more than 20 contacts won't work. Yes, I should mention that there are a number of pieces of information pertaining to limits on things like how many people you can video chat with, how many contacts you can have, and so on, available at the Microsoft website. And If you basically do a Google search or a search on the Microsoft website for things like limits on Teams, you should be able to find those. There are lists of those kinds of limitations available if you need them. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Teams communication thing, because that's turning out to be pretty useful. I've known several people, even in just the last couple of weeks, who have been using the online video meeting feature in Teams and found that as long as all the software is installed correctly, it works just fine. So if I select my team and I go down to the bottom of the window here, again, we have the Meet Now. If I give this a click, the program is essentially waiting for me to click the second button here to start the meeting, and all I would have to do from there is wait for everybody to join. The idea, of course, is that if, as we currently have the situation, we have to meet remotely, or if under normal circumstances you have to meet remotely with people you deal with regularly outside your own organization, certainly not a problem. Again, the main thing that I've been hearing about is not whether the remote meetings, the online meetings work. It's just a matter of bandwidth, making sure that everybody's on a reasonably fast connection. I've heard about a couple of minor issues with things like DSL lines as opposed to broadband. So that is something which you may need to check into with all parties before you start having those kinds of meetings regularly. On a different level, I do want to talk about one or two other aspects of the program besides the main things here. I just want to touch on a few of the other features. First off, the command box up top. What this is for is to give us a few shortcuts. If I click in the command box and type a /, we can see we have somewhere upward of 15 or 18 shortcuts, things like seeing someone's activity, setting our status, calling someone, sending quick messages. So if I were to click on, let's say, keys, if I were to type /keys, then hit enter, I would actually get a list of the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, somebody's asking, several people in their office are having inconsistency issues with the cameras. They work sometimes, but not others. Is this a camera laptop issue or a bandwidth issue? From the little I've been hearing, it is very rarely a bandwidth issue. There may possibly be an issue with other software interacting badly with the Teams software. I don't know that that's the case, but that's the comments I've been hearing a little bit. I would check into whether somebody has a number of other things running at the same time. Another possible cause would be if the computer's processor and memory are being overloaded, because even though it isn't a bandwidth issue, giving the computer too much to do at any one time can slow things down and has occasionally caused issues with cameras working. They take up a lot of bandwidth. Okay, somebody else is asking, how do you add a calendar to your space? Let me see if I can actually show you that in a moment, if I may. I'll just finish what I was doing here, and then I'll see if I can show you that. Anyway, once we take a look at the keyboard shortcuts, this is something you may want to jot down, any shortcuts that you might use frequently. Okay, somebody was asking about adding calendars. Well, if we go to the team, let's see here, we can actually add from other apps, things like even Outlook calendars, for starters here. Another thing, let's see, I was actually taking a look at that. Bear with me here for one moment. Let's see. Okay. Okay. sworn that it was available from the team menu or from the channel menu. Let's see. Okay, manage the team. Let's see. Okay, I think we can do it from the apps here. We should be able to get to Outlook. We'd have to go into more apps. I think that would be at least one route by which we could add calendar-related information. I did mention earlier that if we click on calendar here, that will at least bring up the calendar for whoever is signed in. So that would be one's personal calendar. If you're talking about other calendars, that is something which I can look into. Okay, somebody's saying, tried to add the meeting to the calendar, but it said calendar not found, even though I chose Outlook and have a calendar. Okay, well, that is something I can look into. I do want to talk about a couple of other items here before we finish up, but I'll see what I can find out for you. Okay. I did also want to mention one or two other items from the command box. You may have noticed when I clicked up there that if I type an @ symbol as opposed to the front slash, we get some other information that we can get into, including things like news, places, stocks, weather. We can even do Wikipedia searches and look for videos on YouTube. And we can even click more apps here. And again, we can see what else is available to add to Teams. These would be added at the top of whichever space. And this is another of the things that I did want to just take a moment and talk about. This is another item which may be limited by IT or by whichever admin on the network. There are some companies that do not want certain apps added because of the possibility of viruses or other kinds of malware. So if you go to one of the apps windows here, for example, if we click on the main apps icon here on the left, and we do not see any or as many of these available, it may be something that your IT folks have deliberately limited for safety reasons. I've actually had a couple questions about that even prior to the webinar, and I've been checking into that a little bit. It turns out that while Microsoft Teams is proving to be very useful, somebody had mentioned earlier about companies turning off the right to create Teams managers and above. That's one of the kinds of things that can be limited or set up using, among other things, Active Directory. So if you take a look at a book on Microsoft Teams, you see this or that feature which seems to offer, for example, plenty of apps from third parties. You go into apps and only see a handful or none, or if the apps feature is not even available, it may just be that your company is trying to be careful about, as I said, malware or other kinds of potential problems. Okay. I should take a moment and talk a little bit about the settings for Teams, because at least a few of these are things we certainly want to be aware of. And if we go up to the profile, the sign-in for whoever's using the program, we can see that the choice of settings can be found right here. We also have one small feature which I feel is worth mentioning, and that is a zoom. I know at least a few people who don't have perfect 20/20 eyesight, and the ability to zoom in or out means that they can get a little bit easier reading, especially if they have a larger screen. Okay, somebody's asking, how do we schedule a team meeting in a calendar? I will answer that in just a moment. I did want to also just say briefly here, let me go ahead and zoom back out, that if we click on the settings, Among other things, we can change whether the program will auto start, whether we want to keep it running after the window is officially closed. This is something you may or may not want to have going on, because if you have signed out or logged off, you want to make sure that nobody mistakes you for being available. As far as privacy is concerned, read receipts. If you want to participate in surveys from Microsoft Teams, that's up to you. Notifications, you may want to take a few minutes and go through the notifications and decide what's important enough to ring all the bells and whistles. Devices can also see what's set up for audio, for speaker, microphone, and if you want to double check your appearance before you start any meetings, you can even see down here that the integrated webcam is being tested, so I can see that I'm presentable before I would do anything online. Okay, to the question that was asked, how do you schedule a team meeting in a calendar? If we go to Teams and take a look at the Meet Now, there's actually a clickable for it right here. So schedule a meeting. If we click that, we can then just jump directly to the new meeting details. You can also do it from calendar here, but I've had a number of people tell me that for some reason or other, they just feel like jumping through the window there, and then you just specify date, time, duration, etc. No problem. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay. Just to mention a couple of other little things under the profile and settings here. You can change your status as you can in Outlook, available, busy, etc. The keyboard shortcuts are also listed here if you want them. Again, I recommend at least being aware of these, because the truth is that I know some people who vastly prefer the keyboard shortcuts to using the mouse. There's no right or wrong, but it's a question of, what you're more comfortable with. You can also check the version, the legality, the privacy and cookies stuff here if you need to. And I should mention, although I'm not going to sign out just yet, that this is where you want to go if you not only want to close the window, but make sure that you are not listed as available anymore. That's where the sign out should come from. Changing the picture, of course, that's entirely up to your company, whether you'll be permitted to do that or whatever. But if you have a picture, you can upload it of yourself and then just click save once it's done. Okay. One or two other little things before we finish up here. As I said earlier, if we click on the apps icon over here, we can see what's available to link into Teams. And I have, to be very honest, I have no idea exactly how many there are available. Okay, somebody's asking, companies in the process of transitioning away from Skype for Business to Teams. Is it possible to start a chat from Teams with someone who does not use Teams? As far as I know, the answer is yes. But I have also been given to understand that anybody who's using Skype will be notified that Skype for Business has been deprecated, and they will be given a link to download and otherwise transition to Teams. So the answer, as far as I know, is yes. But Microsoft is making an effort, no sarcasm intended here, to try and get everybody onto Teams as quickly and efficiently as possible. If you find out different, please feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to try and update whoever. Anyway, the help, just in case I forgot to mention it, is also down here. You can click on the help, and you can click on topics. This is where most people start. You can see that it's possible to click on some of these little tutorials here, which are kind of nice, and then some of the popular things. And for the admins, this might be useful for anybody here who happens to be in IT and or who is in management. It even has its own set of training tutorials, so you'll have a little bit of an additional reference there. There's a what's new. I've had quite a few people tell me that just knowing this was there, at least they have some reference material, has been nice. The what's new has been a big help because you can see how many updates there have been just since the beginning of the year. And at least keeping an eye on that would be helpful. Again, be aware that if you don't see, gobs and gobs of apps that you can bring in or link in, it may be that your company is restricting that for safety reasons. So don't panic. Check with your IT folks about that. One last thing I'd like to show you before we finish up relates to Microsoft Outlook. And if I bring up Outlook 365, also known as Outlook 2016, I don't have an account set up here yet, but I did want to mention, just sort of FYI, that if we're in Outlook 365 and we click on New Items here under the Home tab, we can see that it's possible to schedule a Teams meeting from Outlook as well. It may not seem like a very big deal. To some people, it's not. But I've actually had one or two people tell me that it's a nice feature because they're still used to working with Outlook. There are some folks who only started working with Microsoft Teams a few months ago or a few weeks ago. And being able to at least set up meetings from Outlook has been a nice kind of, dip a toe in the water sort of transition. So again, FYI. All right. In finishing up, I just want to reiterate a couple of little things from the, okay, somebody's asking if we'll get a copy of the recording. I don't know about releasing copies. That's something you can check with the company on, that is with my company.
Hey, Seth.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Joel. I just want to jump in and let you know, yeah, I will follow up and email a link to the recording sometime after the session is over.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Oh, boss, before you go, and I'll beg your pardon for jumping sideways here, I did prepare some handouts, some bits of handout for the folks here. I'd like to make those available if I may.
Sure, we can post those too.
Okay, yeah, because a couple of reference things from the class. May I email those to you and ask you to make them available?
Sure. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Somebody was saying, I've heard that there's a difference in setting meeting up in Outlook, which automatically sends to everyone invited, and setting up in Teams directly that might not send the notice to everyone. Okay. What I can tell you is that when setting up meetings in Outlook, it is possible to specify who the meeting invites go to. So as far as Outlook versus Teams, right this second, I could not answer that question completely, but I can tell you that it is possible to specify at least which team the invites can go to, if not the specific people. I can try to answer those questions afterward if my boss would make it available. I don't mind if anybody wants to ask for my email address or whatever afterward. I can certainly try to help out a bit with questions like that if nobody has any objection. Okay. Let me just, since we're about to finish up here, let me just bring up one last thing in my PowerPoint slides. If anybody wants to double check the dates for the upcoming classes for the Office 365 with Teams class, again, April 15th, May 13th, and June 10th. These are going to be each a one-day class. And I also wanted to mention that in addition to a couple of lessons on Microsoft Teams, the class covers getting started with Office 365, in case anybody had not already, collaborating with shared files, using a couple of the other productivity apps, and indeed, using Outlook on the web. So if you're interested, please take a look at our site. Again, skillforge.com, and check in and throw any questions you have at the boss. Be happy to try and answer anything that we can. And okay, somebody's asking, can you invite people outside of your organization to team meetings? Similarly, can people outside of the organization be added to a team? The answer is yes. That, however, is something which has to be initiated or enabled at the Active Directory level first. I actually made a point of checking on that because when a couple of folks who were already using Teams had asked about that, I was looking around. And again, the answer is yes. The main problem is that it's something that cannot be done within Teams itself. So you'll need to talk to your IT folks, specifically whoever's in charge of your Active Directory server, whoever's in charge of enabling those kinds of permissions. It can be done, but unfortunately it is outside my purview. It is not something which I could give you any of the technical details on.
Hey, Seth, this is Joel. I just wanted to jump in really quickly. I apologize for interrupting. Just to let people know that in addition to the dates that you have on your slide, those are our publicly scheduled, open enrollment, live online Teams classes. That same class can be delivered on a private group basis. So if you are in a company and you do have a group of folks that you are interested in having training for Teams on, we can deliver that on a private basis. That would be obviously live online as well right now, given the current situation. But if you do have a need for that, please feel free to just reach out to me. If you received the invitation for this webinar via email, which you most likely did, my email address was used for the invitation, so you can just reply to that and I'll get it. Or if you'd like to send me an email directly, my email address is joelw@skillforge.com. And I will again be following up with an email to everyone attending with a recording and some of the resources that Seth mentioned. So you'll get my email address there as well. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, folks, we've reached the end. So I just want to thank you for coming in, and I appreciate everybody's taking the time. I hope I was able to give you a little bit of a starting point on working with Teams, and I'll look forward to seeing you if I happen to be teaching any of the classes. We do have a couple of other folks who teach for us, of course, and please, do take a look. Don't hesitate to use the help in the program because, as I said, a lot of people have said it's at least been giving them a good footing, a good, toe in the door or whatever for the class. So thanks again. Have a safe Friday. Have a safe weekend. Please be careful, and look forward to seeing you folks again if circumstances allow.